Hey fellow babies, welcome back to the Pachter Factor on Sifted.net. I am hopeful that you are watching this as a Patreon patron on Sifted.net. If not, you're getting on a week delay, and so your patronage isn't coming through, and you're watching it on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, please, if you can't afford to be a Patreon patron, please link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account if you have an Amazon Prime account, and Amazon will pay us a couple bucks every time you do that. You have to renew that subscription every month, but that's easy. Once you set it up, and the instructions are below, it's a one-click setup, so it's super easy to do. Our first question this week from Sifted from Substance104. Will the Switch be in trouble once the PlayStation 5 and Xbox 2 launch? Do you think when Nintendo will counter with a mid-generation Super Switch aside from the reworked handheld-only version you previously mentioned? I don't expect the Super Switch. I don't think the Switch will be in trouble. I think the handheld-only version is absolutely happening. Nintendo's CEO was giving an interview, and he talked about moving away from a console world and focusing on handheld. So I think that the novelty of the Switch as a Switch device, as a flip back and forth from handheld to console, is probably wearing off, and I think more people are using it as a handheld. I think if Nintendo made it a handheld only, they could knock the price down a lot. And so my bias is that by the time PlayStation 5 and Xbox 2 launch, which will be November 2020, the Switch is going to be handheld only and 150 bucks. And so I don't think it matters at all. I think if they can get a Switch down to 150 bucks as a handheld only, they're going to thrive. They're going to sell 25 million a year every year, and they're going to be dominant. So truthfully, I think Nintendo's going to be on the upswing if they do that. They won't make much money on hardware, but they will make a buttload. That's a finance term. A buttload of cash on software. And so I frankly think they're not in trouble. I'll tell you what's impressive is that Nintendo's pace of software development is really, really remarkable this cycle. They just keep generating big titles. And fortunately, the Wii U was such a disaster. They're recycling, Super Mario U. I mean, they're bringing back these titles that you don't even remember because you didn't have a Wii U. So I think they can keep this going for quite a while. And so I'm impressed, and no, I do not think they're in trouble. Our next question from Sifted from Dyson. Which publisher is set to have the most financial success in 2019? I don't know how you measure it. So financial success, Activision makes about $1.5 billion a year. EA makes about $1.5 billion a year. Take-Two makes about $500 million a year, just to kind of put that in context. Ubi makes about $500 million a year. Nintendo, more, a couple billion. They're probably bigger than the other guys. Microsoft, actually more, a couple billion, $3 billion. Sony, right in there. So if you think of Microsoft and Sony as a publisher, obviously they're not making all that money on publishing. They're making money on console sales. Nintendo's not making all that money on publishing. They're making the money on console sales as well. So the pure publishers, the biggest by a lot is Tencent. The Western guys, Activision and EA, are pretty close. Activision a little bit bigger. They make a little bit more money. There's just not that many of them, and I don't know that it matters who's going to have the most financial success. If you're thinking about it on a return on investment, Activision has higher margins than the other guys, so they make a higher percentage return. The stocks have all gotten hammered, in the last several months, and there's reasons for all that. So EA stock has gone down because people got spooked about FIFA Ultimate Team not being as big a growth engine as it was in the past. There was a lot of concern about delays in games. Activision has had a lot of hiccups. Hearthstone and Heroes of the Storm have declined. Overwatch was declining. I think people were worried about, what do you do after Call of Duty? They haven't had an Activision publishing success in a long time, and then they just broke off with Destiny. So that stock is in the toilet. And again, I don't think it changes the long-term outlook. I mean, Destiny was going to come out in 2020 maybe, and then not again. So that was a one-time loss, and it's not that big a deal. Take-Two, I actually think, is a very solid company. The problem with them is you just don't know when anything's coming out. So we know that there are a couple of thousand Rockstar employees who are hard at work. I mean, those guys are not slackers, and if anything, read about Rockstar, they work too hard. So it's not like they're out there just goofing around counting their billions of dollars. They're out there actually working hard on games. If you knew that there was a Rockstar game coming every year for the next 10 years, that's the best company to own. I just don't know that that's happening. My bias is they're going to have 5 or 6 games in the next 10 years, or maybe more. And if they have 5 games in the next 10 years, that's a great stock to own. But I could be wrong. So it's a real hard one to tell you what to own. Ubi is probably the best of all of them in terms of balance between their lineup and their predictability. Like, we kind of know that Ubisoft is coming out with an Assassin's Creed every year to 2 years, a Watch Dogs every 3, a Far Cry every 3, Ghost Recon every 3, a Rainbow Six every 3, a Division every 3, and then they have some other titles like a For Honor, an occasional For Honor. That was a new title. What did I leave out? An occasional Splinter Cell.
Crew.
Yeah, The Crew, Skull and Bones. I mean, you kind of add it up, they got a lot of IP, and they own pretty much all of it. So, Ubi is the one that I think is the most predictable. Activision is the one that's the most successful because they have these gigantic franchises. EA, we're going to see if the Respawn acquisition works, but Titanfall, Star Wars license, sports licenses are obviously very big. Battlefield is not, it's uneven. Anthem could be gigantic. So, lots to like about all these guys. I think if you were looking to invest and you're not really sophisticated enough to make a pick among one or the other, buy all 4. Put an equal amount of money into each of Activision, EA, Ubisoft, and Take-Two, and that basket will make money. I think you're going to do very, very well investing in those. But I can't pick, a time frame because Activision went from 85 to 45, so you could lose money. If you have a 3 or 4 or 5 year horizon, you're going to make money in all of them. And I would recommend, if anything you own doubles, sell half, take your profits. I was talking to Shane about his investment in Apple at 100 and it went to 230. If he had sold half, he would have gotten all his money back, and then he could have been riding it all the way back down and be fine. So always take profits when stocks go up and use dips as an opportunity to buy more. Obviously, if you don't have more money, you can't do that. But take profits when stocks go up, and I think that's a good strategy over the long run. You got to find something else to invest in when you take profits, but put it in the market as a whole, and you'll be fine. Our next question from YouTube, from Jared Barzay. Hey, Pac, at the end of this generation, what will we look back on and say was the single biggest mistake each of the big 3 console manufacturers made? Keep up the great work, thank you. Microsoft's easy, DRM. Microsoft just started out on the wrong foot, and they had the boneheaded idea of penalizing you for owning a disc, and they were going to make sure that you couldn't use that disc anywhere except in the one box you bought, and gamers hated that, and they revolted, and that was the end of that. I hate to criticize somebody who said no to cross-platform in whatever month that was, February, and then said yes in September, so like, who cares? Took them 6 months to say yes. I mean, sure, but I don't think that really hurt them badly. I guess let me turn that over. It was a mistake, but man, how much do you love Sony that they acknowledged they made a mistake and fixed it? So I don't think you should ever penalize somebody for acknowledging a mistake and correcting it. They really haven't screwed up. I mean, if you're selling 91 million consoles at full price, then more power to you. So no, I don't think pricing is a mistake. I mean, it would be more consumer friendly to cut price, but that's like saying, why aren't iPhones, $200? I I mean, they only cost 125 to make, but you know, that's part of the deal. It's a profit deal. No, I really can't think of any major mistakes Sony has made. I really can't. And Nintendo, you know, I guess the mistake they made is they're just out of step with the other guys. So, you know, so they had an interim console, which was the Wii U, which is, I guess, before this cycle. But they didn't just abandon that thing after like a nanosecond. You know, they probably should have just moved on. So the mistake was even doing the Wii U, because it kind of put them out of step for, what, till 2017, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it put them out of step for 4 years. But the Switch is nice. I mean, they've done a nice job. And if I have to criticize them at all, it's because it's still $300. But you know, all three of these guys are keeping prices, you know, too high, but not massive. So I really don't think any of them made a fatal mistake other than Microsoft and DRM at launch. That was a bad mistake. And again, Microsoft's coming back. You know, Xbox Anywhere is a great feature. First one to say yes on cross-platform play. That's a big positive. So they've done a lot right. All right, our last question this week from Sifted, from Zet Saber. You've mentioned future TVs having CPUs and GPUs built in. Would Sony ever consider offering a variant of its Bravia TVs with PlayStation 5 hardware? What a smart question. Would it be smart to keep that feature from other TV manufacturers to help boost two of its business pillars? Or would it be more beneficial to offer it for all TVs? I think that's really smart. I don't know if they'll do it with PS5, but they could absolutely do it with PS4. And so the question you're asking me is, if Sony does do something like that, are they going to be Windows? Are they going to be, you know, Mac OS? And Apple went its own way with Mac OS, and Microsoft licensed Windows to everybody, and Windows was dominant by a lot. Like 85% of computers were Windows PCs, and you know, Apple wasn't all 15% of the rest, because there were some Linux. But you know, Apple just never competed with, you know, Mac OS with Windows. So if Sony were to do this, I think they probably would do Bravia exclusive for a while, and then after a year or two license it out. The question is just, if there's demand for it, you know, how much money are they going to make on the hardware? Not much. The idea would be that you put it into a Bravia TV. The cost of doing that for them would probably be under $50. And so Bravia TVs have enough of a premium that they could probably afford it, and they're going to make money on the software side, so they make it back. Licensing it, they could do it, and then the cost would be borne by the other TV manufacturers, and they would probably be smart licensing it for free to anybody who wants to build it, because that would then ensure that you're playing PlayStation games. So I think that's a really smart question. I think that is something that is highly likely to happen when the cost is doable. Remember that, you know, the way these GPUs work, they're hot, and so they require a fan. And so the problem is, TVs typically don't have a fan, and TVs are thinner and flatter. And so what I don't understand in technology, and I'm just telling you, I don't understand this, so I'm happy if you guys want to tweet to me. I will not respond to you if you don't follow me on Twitter. But if you want to tweet to me why you can't do it, because putting the GPU so close to an LED screen will melt the screen or something, I don't know the answer. I mean, that's entirely possible. So it might be a physical constraint, physical constraint, that you can't do it. But, you know, ultimately, yes, I think that you'll have that. And, you know, the CPU and GPU don't really have to be in the TV. I mean, they could be in your audio-visual controller. They could be anywhere. But they could be an external device that plugs into your TV that has plenty of room to vent. I don't know the answer.
You mean like a video game console?
Well, right, but it could be, but I'm saying they could make a little, no, it could be like an Apple TV. Yeah. You know, it could be a separate box, or a Roku box, you know, a separate box that plugs into your TV that just has enough room to vent. So, which is what I really think Microsoft Scarlett, the streaming device is. It's something that's able to do that. So I don't know, again, I mean, someone please illuminate me. I'm sure there's somebody out there who is an engineer who works on TVs. Tell me, I don't know. But if you can make a CPU, GPU and a TV and it can hang on your wall and not burn your house down, because it vents properly, yes, I could see that. So I think that would be really smart. And if there's a way to do it where there's a GPU that doesn't burn hot, and possibly that is something that exists, I just don't really know GPU technology enough to know, how that stuff works. I laugh because my desktop here, my laptop here, which is all solid state, everything, if I'm on it for a while, I hear the fan just kind of randomly go on. I'm like, what in a laptop is requiring a fan to go on? It's my GPU, So I'm not doing any. I'm not even playing like hardcore games with my G series mouse. All right, that's what I got for you for Pachter Factor this week. If you are a Sifted patron on Patreon, thank you very much for being a subscriber. If you're not, please try to remember to link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account, and we get a couple bucks a month. You have to renew it every month. Instructions below, pretty easy. And if you are neither, because you got no money, you can't afford Prime, and you can barely afford to turn on YouTube, at a minimum, I hope you're tech savvy enough if you can watch YouTube to join Twitter and follow me at Michael Pachter. Please post on Twitter that you're following me out of guilt. I will crack up, I'll retweet that. And follow at Dinfire, that's Shane. Follow at Sifted Games, that's Sifted. We appreciate your patronage in any manner possible. See you next week.